May all the people take their seats, please. All right. So, thank you very much for joining in tonight. It's the very last episode of this season, of season 18. And I think we had two very great guests so far. And tonight we have a third and last one. But before she can start her talk, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped this season to render our videos, our epic animations. They took forever. And thank you for Anti for playing a set for us, for all the DJs at LSC, for everybody who came, for Ida taking photos for every season, and the cafe team.
I can't hear you. Is that...
And I think our guest joined so far.
That you're talking.
Was muss ich machen, dass sie uns hört?
Okay, I'm gonna just mute again. But just so you know, I cannot hear you.
Hä? Ach so, ja, das weiß ich doch nicht. Hello, Vera. We will be there in a second, but I think you can hear us now. So.
All right, yeah.
All right,
now
perfect.
I can hear you.
So you didn't miss much, but I just said thank you to everybody. Yeah.
Good.
So thanks again for everybody joining and participating. And yeah, thank you to the rest of our team, from the KD Lounge to Fine and Leon, who are sick today, sadly, to Kati for organizing and being there and stuff like that, and Erik putting all his technology knowledge into everything. And yes, so far I think we can start with the talk now, because we have a very special guest. You already heard her. She is live from the Netherlands, if my knowledge is correct. And yeah, I think we are very lucky to welcome her here, because she makes a lot of super interesting and inspiring creative coding, artificial intelligence stuff, and works with typography, graphic design. I think she takes everything she can use and puts it into something very new and very creative. And yeah, I think you are very pleased to see her work. And now, please welcome Vera van de Seyp.
Otherwise, I would have loved to have a beer with you in real life. But yeah, I'm just going to show someone online. And I hear music. Is that me or? Well, I'm just gonna start. Okay, so so my name is Vera, and I actually am sort of a graphic designer.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but we just missed your intro. I'm sorry, it was my fault. I didn't share the screen, so maybe you can start over. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's my fault.
I heard some music in the background.
Yeah, you missed the video. Yeah, but now I think you can start. We see you now. We hear you. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay. I was already like, what is that music in my head? Should I ignore it, or is it? Anyway, so what I said before, I don't know if you missed that then, but yeah, thank you for having me. And I would have really loved to be there with you physically, to have a beer with the warm weather, but I'm in the middle of moving, so that's why I couldn't really join. Yeah, why the travel didn't work out, but I'm joining you online, and hopefully that's almost as fun. So like some of you, I'm also a designer. I actually was trained as a graphic designer because I was really into books, making them at least, reading them not that much, but making them, yes. And at some point when I was studying, I realized I was more into kind of the systems that were behind them. And I think maybe you saw this already on the screen, but yeah, now I have a practice that kind of mixes code and design in a variety of ways. So here you see my studio in Amsterdam that I share with a group of people that all do some sort of technology stuff. So here's, for instance, my one of my studio mates, Mark. who's doing a lot of stuff with touch design, you might know. So yeah, it's really nice. And I think I'm kind of using my profession to explore things. So kind of to understand how things work and use that to make visuals. So that can be really all kinds of stuff. Like quite often it's trying to use forms of pseudo randomness, which is like any type of random that you use on a computer, because a computer can never be random. So because it always does what it's told. So that's called pseudo random. So yeah, that's really interesting to me. I also really enjoy working with data, like basically data sets, and trying to do something, yeah, see how they can be shown in a fun way. I'm really interested anyway in like graphic design stuff. So for instance, like fractals or having grids, of course, and kind of how you can play with that, reading images or making animations with that, making my own tools. So for instance, one here that animates a long pass. I think it says next slide flash warning, but I removed the flash because it was very flashy. So this one is not so flash. Or yeah, there's also a lot of type stuff. So kind of how can you animate that? And how can you kind of make it readable to unreadable, or kind of having this level of abstraction that it's just about readable and then it kind of disappears and becomes a pattern. Yeah, and there's like a lot of stuff that has to do with tool making. So a lot of these kind of interests go into making tools, or yeah, doing some sort of interaction stuff. Yeah, that can be really anything. So it can be a tool, but it can also be an installation or a website or a print or something else. Okay, so that was a little bit like all over the place, but just kind of showing some work to kind of give you an idea of what I've been doing so far. And I'm going to show you 3 projects a bit more in detail that are all, yeah, quite different, I would say. Yeah, just kind of taking you through the process. So this is one that I started when I was doing my master, which was a research master. It was called Media Technology, and just around the time where I started that, this website was launched, which I'm sure you know. It's called thispersondoesnotexist.com. And if you go there, you see a person that doesn't exist, like the title suggests. And basically, it's a little script that if you feed it a lot of input, so for instance, a lot of images of people, then it tries to reproduce that. So it tries to understand what it is and then make it again. And I was really interested in this technology because it was when this website came online, it was for the first time something high resolution. Before that, this technique already existed, but it was never really at a image size that would be interesting for designers. So it was always like images of 128 pixels by 128 pixels, and then there were like whole papers about it, and it was like really interesting, but not really something that you could use in the real world. And here I was like, okay, now this style gun, so this technology had 1024 by 1024 pixels, which is still not that big, but it starts to be something that you can use. So I wanted to see, okay, what can I use this for? Let's close this. There was a little internet. So I needed to find something that was square, that is graphic design, because I wanted to see how can I use it for graphic design, and that could be found online, so that I could make like a big set to feed this little algorithm, yeah, basically to train it on that. So something that was kind of, yeah, making sense. was using album covers, because they kind of have a lot of kind of graphic elements on them that always repeat, like in different styles, but there's always a like a title of the album, usually a band name, and then it has a composition, it has different types of images, and it's really kind of a canvas on its own. So I made like a little scraper, which is a script that if you run it, it just automatically downloads stuff for you, which is really nice. And I use that on Discogs, which is an open source music sharing platform, to download a bunch of album covers. I had to redo it a couple of times because that was for me like the first time downloading this many. But in the end, I had around 200,000 different album covers, so images divided over 7 genres and 4 subgenres each. Then the number you see is like the amount of album covers. So then I had the data set and I had the code, because that was open source from This Person Does Not Exist, so you could use it and modify it. And then I had to build a computer, because that doesn't just run on a normal computer. And the most important part of this kind of algorithm is that you have a really good graphics card. And yeah, actually this was kind of the easiest part of doing this. And yeah, that worked, and I started training it, but then somehow I got this kind of blue screen. And yeah, I couldn't really figure out why I had all these components working and it should all work normally. But then I realized it was kind of a heat wave. That was the best type of engineering that I ever did. It needed a human fan next to all the other fans that I built into the computer to work. So then I started training, and yeah, it was interesting, but it was still really kind of, the results were a bit generic. So I looked a bit back into, okay, what does it really do, this kind of algorithm? Actually, I didn't tell you the name, but it's like a generative adversarial network. And it's basically like a little box, and in that you have all the results. So you can get a point in that box, and then it will give you an image back. And it's kind of like clusters. So if you have a point, if one point is really close to another point in this box, then the images that you get out of it are really similar. But then if the points are really far apart in this 3D space, then they're very different. So there's really like kind of clusters of patterns that it's learned and that it can reproduce. The only difficult thing is that it doesn't have 3 dimensions, but it has 512. But yeah, we can kind of ignore that, and just this model I think really works. And so when I did that, I realized, okay, so if you train Subjugum on a smaller data set, it also kind of can take up that space to learn things in more detail, even though the data set is not larger, but just, then it has kind of more space to focus on certain data set that might otherwise not really train on that much. So I trained it on all the different genres of the music instead of on everything together. So this is classical music, and I'm showing 4 every time, but there's like 1,000 or like a virtually infinite amount of things that it can make. So I show every time like 2 that kind of look realistic and 2 that are really not realistic, but I kind of like those better. So that was classical music. This is country. So you saw they started getting this cowboy hat. This was electronic music. So you saw that here the image became a bit crunchy, or a little bit more abstract, less detailed. This one was RMB, so you see that it learned this parental advisory sticker really well, because that kind of appears on several covers, of course. And then this was jazz, and pop music, and rock. And yeah, I also trained it on all the subgenres, but that there's 28 of those. So I think you kind of get the gist of it. My favorite subgenre is heavy metal because, yeah, I think this is really good for that. So what I kind of learned from this, because it was really kind of like seeing what this can do rather than making a concrete product in the end, just kind of experimenting and seeing what the limits were. So one thing I think it can do really well working with this technique is animation. So I think, yeah, with this you can make animations that kind of morph that are really hard to reproduce in any other technology. That, yeah, I think it's interesting. And one thing that of course doesn't work is the type. It doesn't really understand how to make words. So that is kind of necessary if you're spelling. And it can kind of make letters, individual letters. It doesn't understand how to make those, but it doesn't really understand the semantic meaning of words. So it's just like, I guess after an H, it's probably a B, or yeah, it just kind of starts making up words, which is interesting on its own, but it's of course not functional. So I did find a way to kind of go about controlling this type, basically by training it on one letter at a time. So on the left, you see kind of a random navigation, where it's just like moving around in this 3D space, and on the right, you see that it really goes from one letter to the other. So then you can kind of control it and make animations of words or of whatever other thing. Well, I guess words that you want to kind of use it for type, of course. So that is quite interesting. And yeah, what I learned here was that doing fans work for computers, these things are not very smart, and it kind of changes the way that you design. So it becomes more about kind of picking from a set of results than making something from scratch. And then this is the second project that I wanted to show. That is a bit different again. This is about knitting, and this started a little bit in the lockdown, kind of after the first summer, when everyone kind of had this hobby, and mine was knitting. So not sourdough bread or kombucha or making what other, I forgot what people did, but like these kind of craftsy things. And I kind of trained myself more and more to also make really patterns. And as you see, like I use these kind of spreadsheets that and just fill them with the color to make these designs. Oof. And then, sorry, I'm just gonna play this animation again. At some point I found out there's machines that can do this. So I was doing all of this by hand, and it takes like a really long time. And yeah, there's machines that you can kind of use that can make these patterns, or that at least can knit faster. And for me, that kind of made sense, because a lot of the stuff I make that is digital, it's actually really pixel based and very like gritty. And what's quite nice about it is that then you can kind of convert those pixels to stitches, and it's kind of the same, it's a similar logic. So it somehow really clicked for me, and that was really kind of a nice realization. There was some sound again. So then I also found out, at first I was just changing, like with this V, for instance, that I showed, I was just changing the yarn by hand on this machine, but I also found out you can actually hack electronic versions of this machine. That means that you can replace the memory in there with an Arduino, and then you can feed it images or data, and then it will per row kind of translate this black and white or on and off or 1 and 0 to 2 different types of colors. And it can even do 3, although that's like, then you have to be really good at knitting. And that was really kind of fun because then you could you could just make, it really helped to kind of make really bigger scale work instead of like this very small hand knit stuff that was like maybe 10 by 10 centimeters at the end. And then I realized, I was working together with Charlotte Rode, who I think also gave a talk maybe in the last series. Who is a type designer and also an artist. And we were kind of doing these claying or knitting sessions together. So I would go to her to clay and she would come to me to do some knitting. And at some point that was just kind of for fun. And at some point we were like, maybe it would be good to somehow find a way to put this to a next level or to really make like a bigger work and have like something to work towards. So we got in touch with Soft Power, that's a project space in Berlin. And basically they let us do like a show there, and we could even work there for a week or 2 weeks. And it was really kind of a really interesting way to work because we were still kind of initiating this ourselves. But that gave kind of a good context to start making bigger works and really like try to push what we had been doing so far. So the show was really, I think, it was really fun because we both made individual works that were a bit larger, but we also did some collaborations. And I think like the bigger works, they kind of, for both of us, reflected on what it is to, or what it, kind of frustrations, what it's like to be a woman in kind of a field that doesn't, where that's kind of not a standard, or where you're kind of a minority. I mean, we're still white, so it's not that we're struggling with this as much as maybe some other people, but it is something that you're I think confronted with if you start working, especially maybe already in school, but especially afterwards you really realize this kind of systematic habits that people have that are not really necessarily working in your favor, or that can be challenging. And so for my works, I made 3 big kind of tapestries that all reflected on the time when these knitting machines were really made. So when they were really created, because they're quite old. They're made between the 50s and the 80s. And coincidentally, that is like a very product really aimed at housewives. So like, oh, you can now like use this machine. It will make your life easy. It's portable. Here's how you use it. We're not going to really explain to you how it works, but you just have to like push this button and then it will work for you. This machine existed in the same time that programming computers kind of took off. And actually there was a job that really was at first predominantly done by women, not just white women, also women of color, women that were not necessarily coming from an elite background. It was really kind of a job that you could earn a lot of money with, but that was just needing people to do it. So they kind of also let you learn this while you were doing it. It was really good opportunity. And the first work that I made was a very long one, as you can see, going from soft work to software. So that is also kind of what happened between the 50s and the 80s. It's this profession kind of started as soft work. So programming kind of at first was more considered like transcribing text, and then that eventually kind of developed in what we now know as software, so kind of programs that run on the computer, so everything about the computer that is digital. And yeah, also all the works they're using a typeface that I made that really fits this logic of this machine with the stitches really well. So that was the first work, and then the second one was way more abstract. So there you see again that there's still type on it, but I don't know. I don't think that anyone could tell. But if you rotate your head like this, or maybe you have to rotate your head the other way around. But then it says woven memory. So, and this was also a bit abstract because it was actually really about the back of the work. So kind of, it was also hanging in space with the back very visible, because these kind of wires or these kind of yarns, they kind of look like electronic wires. That was also something that women did. So the first kind of computer memories, they were hand woven, like little pieces of I don't know if it was iron, but like metal wire. It's probably something else in iron. I don't know that part, but anyway. And then the third piece, so there I was only using one color, but in different weights of yarn. And that shows a quote from a book of 1967 that was supposed to encourage women to start this profession. So it was kind of, it was really meant to make women kind of discover this this field of expertise that was formerly quite unknown. And a quote from the book is, "If you like cooking from a cookbook, you're gonna love programming," which, if you think about it now, it's kind of makes my blood boil a little bit. But at that time, it was really meant as something very positive and like, if you like kind of following instructions, then this is gonna be your thing. So there, this work was also, you could also see the back a bit, but this really worked well with the light. So depending on the light, you could read it a bit more or a bit less. I'm also making sweaters that have like no concept, but I'm not going to talk about that now. I am going to talk about the third and final project I'll talk about today, which is again an entirely different thing. So at some point, I'm mostly working as a designer and making stuff, and at some point I was like, actually, I would like to maybe not be the person that makes the stuff, but kind of make a platform or make a place, kind of create a place where people can talk about the things that are interesting to me and I'm sure also to others, really also make it accessible. So the idea was to make a creative coding symposium that was still very accessible for people that were maybe not really that much into coding yet, but they were just interested or just wanted to join. So that was how iterations began. Actually, this is how it began. So I wanted to make that I had to come up with a title, and I just like wrote some names, and then together with Marina Donna, who was working for me with me at the time, we were like picking the papers to see which name we could pick, but we really liked this one. So because it was kind of, well, you're already seeing it. It was kind of inspired by the beach ball that you get, like the beach ball of death. The new one I like a bit less, but the old one had this really nice kind of gradient, and it was rotating, and then it also had this, you kind of instantly get like a shock when you see it. You're like, no, my computer. I don't know. I think it's a very fun symbol. Yeah, the identity was kind of loosely started with that, kind of having these iterations, so these rotations, and yeah, everything was coded. So here you see, if you're doing that, then sometimes you get kind of funny things. And what was quite nice about this, so I was producing most of the events, which was way more work than I thought it would be, and I already thought I was underestimating it, but I was like big time underestimating it. But what is quite nice when you're kind of your own client in design, then you can just do whatever you want, which I think if you're in school, you can already do that a little bit more, a little bit. But yeah, that was just really fun to everything that we thought about. So like, for instance, we were debugging, and we used kind of this red background to debug, and to see like if the scroll was working correctly. And then we actually really liked it, and we're like, okay, we're gonna leave it in. So there were a lot of kind of jokes and little funny things that we hid in the identity. So yeah, and actually what was nice here is that we started with code and digital, and then we went to back to print. So we made also some flyers with the timetable. There were also, you could use from a print screen. And then the posters, I think there's some hanging in the room. And yeah, it was really, really such a kind of amazing event to me, just because it felt really kind of safe, and people were really like talking also with each other, and with the people that were speaking, and with the people that were making workshops or doing performances. It was hybrid because it was just before the lockdown in the Netherlands in the past winter. And yeah, it just really, I think, worked quite nicely regardless. Yeah. So we had some talks and some live coding as well. And here you see like a trailer. I didn't make it, but I think it's nice kind of to give you an idea of some of the work that was done. So here you see, for instance, Rafael Bastida and some of the work he did. And yeah, it was a really kind of special event because people were kind of like showing how they were working, but then also making it really open, which I think is very different in design. So that's really the thing I really like about the creative coding community, or the in general like open source community, that there's much more kind of this sharing and just like showing how you made something from scratch. Oh, that's my face. I'm gonna click next. Okay. Yeah, it was really, because of that, I think it was really nice. We're gonna do one again this year, probably 8th and 9th of December. And you can watch the previous, at least the lectures, not all the performances, but the lectures you can watch online for free on this link. And yeah, that was everything I wanted to show to you. So thank you so much for listening, and you can see more of my work on my Instagram. I'm gonna stop sharing, and let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, you can hear me. So now we have a little bit time for some questions. If you have any, just go ahead and ask them. Yes.
I'm back. Sorry, there was a beach ball, ironically.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Andreas Refsgaard, who was here, got asked the same question, and you have like a huge variety of projects, and some people are more comfortable sharing that part, and some are not as comfortable. But I was wondering if you could like give us a cake diagram of how you make money.
A cake diagram?
Like
like a
split.
pie chart.
Yeah, like a
I
pie chart.
actually show that
yeah.
sometimes. I actually show that sometimes. I didn't put it in this presentation, but like most of it is cultural projects. I would say like 60%. Then there's like maybe, no, 50%. 50%. Then I think there's like 30% or 25 commercials. So that is like paying a lot better, but then usually bigger work. Then there's teaching. So I'm also teaching, well, actually I'm going to stop now. So I'm kind of, well, that's a different story, but normally then that will be like, I would say also 15 to 20%. Am I already at 100%? I don't know, like that. Yeah, let me see if I can, no, I'm not going to look for that site. Yeah, so, and I think there's then a small percentage actually, which is really nice. In the Netherlands, you can get funding. So you can, you have to like know what you're doing, but you can apply for like project funding, and then kind of if you can justify and show like the relevance and show what you're planning to do, and kind of show it's realistic, like demonstrate it's realistic, then you can get money. So there's also a little part of the projects where you actually when you saw like supported by creative stimulating funds or like creative industries funds, like that is the funding. So yeah, it depends a bit per year, but I would say that's like the general division. And I am showing like more self-initiated work where I got funding, or sometimes like cultural projects, but only if like the clients didn't like change everything, because that happens also. And yeah, but again, if you want, like I think it's very interesting and important to talk about that, because especially if you're a freelancer, I think you'll need to find like a balance between projects that are like good for your portfolio, projects that are fun, that actually make you happy about being a designer, and then just projects that make money, which you need to pay rent and stuff. That, yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's I think that kind of summarizes it.
All right.
Hi, my question is the knitting machine just analog, or does it have like any digital help for your knitting?
I have 3. I got like three in like 4 months when I started this. So I was like, oh my God, kind of like discovering this world and just like spending a lot of money on stuff on Marktplatz, which is kind of like eBay, I would say, or Kleinanzeigen, I think in Germany we have. So the one that I made the bigger works on, that one is digital, so it's electronic, and you basically can hack it by replacing the memory with an Arduino with a little shield on it. And there's actually a whole community around this. So there's like, it's called AJAB, All Yarns Are Beautiful, which I just love the open source community because their names are so bad, but it's so cute. It's like, oh, they're like, I don't know. So there's like this whole community around that where you can like find components and find tutorials, and then you can kind of piece things together. Yeah. So, and actually funny about the knitting machines is that the pattern input, that is digital now, but the knitting itself still I have to go by hand. So it's like quite manual, and it actually requires quite a lot of force, because you have to do this, like if you're going to make this very long thing, it's like, I don't know, 1,500 stitches or something, so you have to go like this 1,500 times, which I don't have like muscles for, so it was a good training.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it is.
All right. I have a question too. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but you studied graphic design and then you started creative coding and stuff like that, and you work as a freelancer. So maybe you can tell us something about the process, how you became a freelancer, and maybe some projects or maybe places where you want to work in the future, maybe some like a utopic dream, what you will do.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I started with coding at the design department, which is not really the best place necessarily to start, because you have to make art, so you cannot like just spend a semester on understanding what a for loop is or what a variable is, or these are all coding things. Just ignore me if you don't know what that is. But yeah, coding, learning how to code, and I then did an internship at a studio called Lust. They're now called R&D Art. They still exist. They work in The Hague. And right after doing an internship there, I worked there for a year. So after my graduation, I was working there as a designer. And I think that really helped kind of also understanding what it takes to do a project if you're like as work, because that's of course different than if you're in school and you kind of have workshops and you can just produce everything yourself and kind of like do everything yourself and also do it on a small scale. So that was a really kind of valuable experience. And I think I kind of alternate now between finding studies and then working. So I kind of like to use studies for even just like courses as a way to just focus on my own work and kind of try to push my boundaries and kind of explore interests, which I don't know if that's like the best way, but I kind of need that framework. So I did that in my master's, the media technology, and actually I'm gonna do that again. So I've been teaching now, but I'm gonna stop that and I'm gonna migrate to Boston for 2 years, to the MIT. I'm gonna do Media Lab. That's kind of, it's a really, really interesting program. They did a lot of, or they're still doing, but they also did a lot of interesting things kind of between art and design and technology. And that has actually been a very, very big dream, to just go there. And now it's happening. I'm like, oh my God. But I think it's going to be really fun. So I think for me, that really works to kind of have moments of working really just full time. And then at some point I'm like, I don't know. And then I'm going to study again and then, or, do more of my own projects. And then after a while, I'm again like, so it's kind of like going between those.
All right. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? All right. I have one last one. Where can we buy your sweaters?
Oh, you can buy them. It takes so much work.
Yeah, I figured that. But they look amazing.
We actually, there is like an Instagram. There was a point that I was like, maybe I can make jumpers, like Spencer's vests, because then the sleeves are actually a lot of work. So then you're just kind of like, you have something. It's called knit.dmg. There was a randomly chosen name, and I'm doing that together with a friend of mine who is really good at hand knitting. So the knitting of the parts is not that much work, but then sewing that together and like making these kind of borders, you have to do that by hand to kind of make it nice, and that I just don't have the energy for. And that's exactly what she likes to do. So we might, I think now, because I'm going to Boston, that's gonna be a very limited edition thing, but it is nice. We'll post from time to time if we're working on it. Who knows, maybe one day.
Sounds great. So maybe we have the chance somewhere in the future. All right. We have a very last question.
Well, first, thank you for the talk. And I just wanted to know what you think about recent technologies. I think you're pretty, you know about all the stuff, maybe about DALL-E and what you think are the potentials for creators like us, who maybe just don't know everything.
I think DALL-E is really fun, especially because it's so easy to use. And it kind of shows the potential of what you can do. It's actually also kind of like a gun, but then it's just trained on a lot more. But there's a similar piece of technology in there. I would be curious to see what you can do with that, although I think like visually it's very similar to these guns that already existed. So I think it's more interesting, like the connection between the language and what it actually makes, that it has seems to have this brain, right? Yeah, so I don't know if that would be something I would really want to explore in my work. I think it's now just really fun to see people type in random stuff, and I actually recently typed in DALL-E because I was like, how does it see itself? Wait, I can see if I still have it open somewhere. Oh yeah, I do. Oh no, wait, it's refreshing. I'm gonna do it again. Give me maybe 10 seconds. I was like, if it's so smart, what does it see itself? How does it see itself? No, it's gonna load. I'll come back to this later when it's loaded. And then it also really depends on the technology. So it's not that I am just interested in all the new technologies just because they're new. So there's stuff that I'm not at all interested in, like NFTs or VR projects. I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm just, well, maybe with NFTs a little bit, but yeah. So it really depends. I hope that somehow answers your question.
Yeah, it did. And maybe another question, if you have the time. I mean, if you read your CV, you can see that you know all these languages, and not just like natural languages like English or German. No, German. Yeah, you studied for 1 year in Germany, so I guess you understand something, and also some other languages, but also many technology languages. I don't know how to call them. Do you? Are you just really good at learning languages, or what is your fascination behind that?
I don't know if I'm necessarily good, but I do really like it. So I think that with a lot of things, it's more that you have the context and the motivation to do something. Then I think that is more important than that you're really good at it, or to be able to do it. I just really like languages, and I really enjoy human languages to start with, because I just think it's really interesting, how we kind of made words for what we're thinking, and then how that kind of translates to different languages, and that you have in each language a word that you cannot translate that kind of embodies a feeling. So but other people have that feeling, they just don't have a word for it. So I think these kind of things are they're very fascinating to me. And then I think with programming languages, that's of course, it is very different, but there are a lot of similarities where you can also kind of say a similar thing with different types of code or with different mediums. Maybe it's not as easy to say it, but there is a way to do that. So I think I'm just really interested in that, and it's not necessarily something that always that I'm always making work about, but it is a lot in the way I approach projects and also working together with people, and like a lot of other things, like going on a holiday. If I go on a holiday, I'm going to be this extremely annoying person that learned like 5 sentences and that's going to repeat it all the time to just like show that I learned it, and then try to learn new things. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers the question. Do you want to see what Dolly thinks of themselves?
Yes.
I don't know if you can. That's kind of cute, right? It made like a little logo for himself.
Yeah.
It's always kind of circular also, which I think, I don't know what to think about that, but it's cute.
Well, thank you for that insight. I think we learned very much of you. And thank you so much for the talk. I think there are no more questions. There's one last question left. Maybe you have time.
I'm very sorry. Hi. So
that's really okay.
one last question for me. I really like programming. I do a lot of web and app development, but I'm utterly shit at creative coding. So what resources would you recommend to me if I wanted to get into the space of creative coding more?
Ooh. Well, actually, I have I'm making a teaching website. I've been doing like a lot of workshops, so it's just going to be a way to document them. But there is also a list of resources, and you cannot filter it, but soon you'll be able to. So I'm putting it in the chat. It's teaching.veravandeseyp.com, and you can actually also add your own. I will need to accept it for you, but you can if you want. So
all right.
So that is kind of like a very long list. I think then like creative coding is just a very big thing, so I would just find something that you think is interesting or that excites you and start there and just see where it takes you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Super random Antwerps. Super random, like but yeah, I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So now, if there are any more questions left, I think, it's just left to say thank you very much. Actually, we have a video I think you didn't saw, but maybe we can show you later.
Oh yeah, please.
Or maybe we can show it again. Woo! Because let's hype the public a little bit more up. Yeah, I think we can share that.
I only see. Oh yeah, no, you're on it.
I hope the media will it work with the tone? Yeah, all right. I just hit play and then you see it.
We'll see.
Hopefully. Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to do the outro for the intro with the intro. And yeah, thank you so much. We still have some time to send us a lot of your work digitally, so we can still look at those works from you. I hope you have a nice move, an easy move.
Thank you.
And we are very interested in your future works. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming.
I'll see you soon.
Yes, hopefully.
Have a nice evening and enjoy the sun.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.